Hi, as usual, I dedicate this video to Jordan B. Peterson. Um, I hope he will be coming to Maine soon um, because he inspires me, and people like him uh, have encouraged me for years to have a voice, and now I am determined to continue making videos. This morning, when I read Isaiah 8:13 through 9:7, I felt really great about it. A lot of people think that um, there's two gods in the Bible, one that damns everybody and one who saves everybody and maybe is just nice. Um, some people won't even look at the cross because that's not the nice Jesus. Jesus, I have shared videos where Jesus wasn't so nice, where Jesus cleansed the temple. He made whips out of uh, cords and banished the sellers of sheep and goats out of the temple. Um, and I shared that to show that being a Christian doesn't necessarily mean to be nice. And first, I am going to read this whole passage, and then I'm going to separate um, the damning passages from the feel-good passages to emphasize that God doesn't condemn everybody willy-nilly. If you get condemned, you deserve it. But if you follow God, you don't get condemned. The Lord of hosts, him you shall hallow. Let him be your fear. Let him be your dread. He will be as a sanctuary, but a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense to both the house of Israel, as a trap and a snare to the house inhabitants of Jerusalem. And many among them shall stumble. They shall fall and be broken, be a snare taken. Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples, and I will wait on the Lord, who hides his face from the house of Jacob, and I will hope in him. Here am I and the children with me, whom the Lord has given me. We are for signs and wonders in Israel from the Lord of hosts, who dwells in Mount Zion. When they say to you, seek those who whisper and murmur, shall not a people seek their God? Should they seek the dead on the behalf of the living, to the law and to the testimony? If they do not speak according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. They will pass through it hard, pressed and hungry. It shall happen when they are hungry that they will be enraged and curse their king and their God and look upward. Then they will look to the earth and see troubles and darkness, gloom of anguish. They will be driven into darkness. Nevertheless, the gloom will not be upon her who is dressed, as when at first light esteemed the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and after more heavily oppressed her. But the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, in Galilee of the Gentiles, the people who walk in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. To you a multitude, you have multiplied the nations and increased its joy. They rejoice before you according to the joy of harvest, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. For you have broken the yoke of this burden and the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, as in the day of Midian. For every warrior's sandal from the noisy battle, and the garments rolled in blood will be used for burning and fuel of fire. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and from the government will it be upon, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his garment will be, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end, upon the throne of David, over his kingdom, to order it and establish it, government and justice from heavenward, and even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Okay, now I want to read just the damning parts. I won't say the bad parts because there are no bad parts of the Bible. People want to deny that they deserve anything bad. It's not the will of God that anyone have bad things happen to them, except in the fact that he allows things to happen. He allows the consequences of our actions. Let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. But a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense to both the house of Israel, as a trap and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And many among them shall stumble. They shall fall and be broken, be snared and taken. They're really being snared and taken as a result of their own actions, their own insolence, their own disobedience. Who hides his face from the house of Jacob. We are for signs and wonders in Israel from the Lord of hosts who dwell in Mount Zion. And when they say to you, seek those who are mediums and wizards, who whisper and mutter, should they seek the dead on the path of the living, the law and to the testimony, if they do not speak according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. I'm going to repeat that. It is because there is no light in them. A lot of people think that the light is in them, as I just said, the light is in them, so they don't deserve anything happening bad to them, and they blame God for that. Um, God is all powerful. However, He doesn't do the will of people. He does His own will. He could make everything perfect, but that would be a really boring world. He doesn't make everything perfect because we don't deserve to have everything perfect. I don't deserve to have everything perfect. Lest somebody say say that Bridget Cox says she deserves to have everything perfect. I don't. I try to make myself as perfect as possible in God's eyes. But I don't succeed a lot. And I get chastised for it. In another video, maybe I'll talk about the difference between the punishment and chastising. God doesn't punish, He chastises and hopes you learn from it. They will pass through it hard pressed and hungry, and it shall happen when they are hungry that they will be enraged and curse their king and their God and look upward. Then they look on the earth and see trouble and darkness, gloom and anguish. They will be driven into darkness. Nevertheless, the gloom will not be upon her who is distressed. And when I'm going to stop there, and now I'm going to read parts that I have underlined to show that God blesses as well as curses. There's not a different God in the Old Testament. The Old Testament prepared us for Christ's coming. I might make mistakes here, forgive me in advance. Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples, and I will wait on the Lord, who hides his face in Jacob, and I will hope in him. Here am I and the children whom the Lord has given me. Should not a people seek their God? The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. You have multiplied the nations and increased its joy. They rejoice before you according to the joy of harvest, as men rejoice when they divide the spoils. For you have broken the yoke of his burden. I'm going to start there. I'm going to emphasize this verse. For you have broken the yoke of his burden. Doesn't sound like an oppressing God to me. Sounds like a great God that I have personal experience of that I'm not going to talk about right now. And the staff of his shoulders, the rod of his oppressors, as in the day of Midian. For every government will be upon his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end upon the throne of David and his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice from that time forward and forevermore. The seal of the Lord of hosts performed this. And I'm going to say goodbye for another day. You heard my parakeet in the background. This is being done from my living room. This is Bridget Talks, and I'll see you another time.